Morning, Zums. It's 5:23 in the morning. It's 15th of May 2023. It's Monday morning. What the hell am I doing up this early in the morning? Yeah, I'm sleep deprived. I'm emotionally screwed up. This is the Weaver John C. from Rosamond, California. The zombie. Zombie. Usually doing the diary of the griever named John Weaver, which would be me. Problem is, there's nothing grieving, so I can't do that one, can I? But I can do a blast from the past that's been driving me crazy throughout the decades when I've heard this damn tune. And I was talking about it. Okay. Uh, yeah, some things I have to have double recorded. This one I had listened to as a young boy in the apartments we lived in North Hollywood on Van Owen and Ethel, on the corner of it. There was a tune that a couple of my brother's friends, Roland Gilbert, came over, brought over a 45 for my brother to listen to. We had a stereo playing. Ma already had permission. Ma already gave permission to Dave to have friends over. At least Roland Gilbert. Everybody else she was very controlling over. That's my mother for you. She didn't trust anybody except for the people she knew. And these two kids, family eventually moved off to, I don't know where the hell they moved off to, but they gave us Gator. A gray poodle with teeth problems. He was always growling, but he was still a nice dog anyway. Got to know him. Anyway, there was an album that was called by a group called Think. Think. It was called Things Get a Little Easier Once You Understand. Now, if you go on Google or YouTube, both, you can see some of the versions of it out there. One of them's got a soundtrack label from 1971. It's the original volume that they've got for this thing. And this soundtrack, it says Laurie on it. Orange, white, black. I think you need to listen to that one because that's the original, and that's what my brother and I listened to. And I was sitting behind a chair, and not quite sure what the hell this damn thing was. My brother was listening to it because he was 8 years older than I was, and he was getting into the out of the teenage situation of elementary school and into junior high, and it's during this time when growing minds are trying to absorb a lot of things, including when you're a teenager and you don't realize what the hell they're talking about. But when you get a little older, then maybe it would make sense during that time. My brother wasn't there, but his two friends, Roland Gilbert, were there. And even they listened to it and they got the message. I'm listening to it as a young kid back in 71, and I didn't understand what the hell was going on. 5 years old. How the hell was I supposed to understand any of this shit? Except the tune stuck in my head. Things get a little easier once you understand. Things get a little easier once you understand. Yeah, I know I got a lousy singing voice. It's about nearly 4 minutes in length, and this thing will tear your heart apart because it applies both to parents and to teenagers. Basically, it's a generational explanation, a little bit, of how things were perceived by both parents and teenagers just by listening to it. Now, I didn't get it because we didn't grew up in that kind of household, but apparently there was other teenagers who actually did. I suppose I could play the damn thing. But this thing got to me. Even now, it's just got me emotionally charged. It's just got me rattled a bit. Listening to it once it just haunted me a little bit because there was the last thing in it that really put it over the top and really made you think and really made you sick to your stomach. Is when you get the knock on the door. And they're a little segment on. I mean, they do little segments here and there as the music builds up to the crescendo and then drops. As that drop, that was the thing. That was the final key of it. Where there's supposed to be a cop at the door. And this is supposed to be after the door is knocked. Are you such and such? Yeah, I am. What's going on here? I have no way of saying this to you, sir. Your son is dead. What? What happened? He died of a drug overdose. What? And the haunting of it, where it says the 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 lyrics again, things get a little easier once you understand. And the guy's crying his eyeballs out for maybe about 30 seconds until the album shuts off. And I guess that there was a hard thing to get into. It was a hard thing to understand. The generational gap between the old and the new. How did they get along with each other? How did they communicate with each other effectively without screaming and yelling at each other? In this situation we're dealing with here, uh, it was said that there was supposed to be like drug abusing going on. It was alluded to that in the lyrics while they're doing their skits, there was supposed to be drug use in there. But as I listened to it back then, and then listening to it now, I even listened to this damn thing several years ago, without my brother, unfortunately. When he passed, when he was dead, and this tune haunted me like crazy. I wanted to find out more about the damn thing. By listening to it, and I'm trying to understand what the hell they were talking about. I tried to compare it to my own generational experiences between Ma and me. Ma came from the generation of saying that if you couldn't get an education, you had to work your ass off. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. You didn't argue. You dealt with it. You worked with it, and that was it. You didn't argue. She had to be the authoritative figure in her. I mean, yeah, you could love her like crazy, but you didn't argue Ma's word. Ma's word was law because that was her roof. And some things I could argue with her about it, but other things I couldn't. Well, growing up as a cocky teenager at times, I had to be put in my place. I had to because some of the things I was doing, I was probably a little out of line, and I didn't realize I was hurting Ma during that time. How could a cocky teenager understand that shit? A parent's supposed to know. Parent sees her kid mouthing off to her like crazy, supposed to obey her, but that generational gap of one side trying to understand the other side shit. She thought she had enough with David. I mean, David was obeying left and right because she beat the shit out of him enough. I mean, back then, you used to belt. You used to belt. Oh, whatever heavy object it was. And there we go. Bye, butt. He was growing up as a kid. Mouthy, cocky teenager. Bye, butt. Till to the point where she couldn't knock his ass out. And Dave would not joke on that one during those days when he was growing up because he knew better. Ma was trying to get his attention and also trying to make sure he obeyed because she didn't want to see him. She didn't want to see him screw things up, failure. I mean, she was trying to take care of him, protect him, but the thing is, sometimes you force a lot of that shit down your throat, and either you rebel against it and harden yourself about it by being angry about it, or you just say, fuck it. I know. These days, it's being victimized by child abuse and suable in courts. Well, reasons why they took out the wiffle paddles in the school districts and up and down the state of California because there was enough of the child abuse. Teachers and principals did that to kids. My brother was telling me that there was a letter that was sent over to the elementary school principal named of Holding. Holding was a notorious principal that gave out corporal punishment. If you didn't obey him, boom, there goes your butt. If you fought, whack. You argued with a teacher, whack. Do something wrong, whack. If you're nice and you're good, no whack. Only I didn't do as much as I should. I didn't get the whacks. Holding knew better because I was one of the kids, only one of the rare kids in his classes that, well, he didn't teach class, he was just the principal there, but I had an open heart surgery. He wasn't about to beat the shit out of me. And I didn't give a shit during that time anyway. But I wasn't there to cause trouble with the teachers anyway. At least not much anyway. You know, kindergarten one through kindergarten one, and then two, and three. During the midst of fourth grade, family moved out from North Hollywood to Arleta during that time. Well, while we were living in North Hollywood and while we were living out there, my brother had friends. Said before, there was a couple of them that he met in the neighborhood that hung out in the apartment because they also lived in the apartment until they moved out to another apartment somewhere up, I think in Ventura, and moved out of the state. God rest their souls, all of them. Gave us a small gray poodle named Gator with mouth problems. Anyway, listening to the soundtrack was bringing back the memories of North Hollywood during that time. And also, that haunting song that stuck with me, and I didn't know what the hell the damn thing was. We didn't have it in our collection. Roland Gilbert came out, and they brought over the disc, and we listened to the 45, and it was theirs, not David's mine. I wish he was still alive because this would have brought out memories with him for this. Because he would have more of the memories than I would on this. Trying to figure that shit out. Hardest damn thing, but it was like once I understand. I mean, things get a lot easier once I understand. Someone had tried to do a review on this decades later, only in my perspective right now in time. It was about 7 or 8 years ago, according to when the video was published on YouTube. These two smart alecky guys, one's in his 40s with gray, and the other ones looked like a 20-year-old hippie. And they're acting goofier and shit. And they pull out this particular album. And this is a video that you can actually find on YouTube as well. And they're making goofy comments about the damn thing, and I don't think they understand it. Because you still got that generational gap going on in that place. But once you become like a parent, and you are responsible for that kid's upbringing, and how they're supposed to be raised, and how they're supposed to be behaving, and how they're supposed to be learning and growing up, that's your responsibility. You are the parent. This is your child. And it's hard to see the changes that the child goes through because you try to see all the similarities and try to understand it through that point of view. Now, I know the damn thing's dated like crazy, but some things you had to put into perspective, even in the generational gaps that we've got. The rebellious nature of the teenager that doesn't want to do what the parents want to do. I think that's been transmitted and translated so many damn times, I'm not even sure if there's an accurate reading on this damn shit. But you look at your own personal experiences according to what the album says. The problem is, we each have our own personal, unique experiences growing up through life. Being educated one way or another, with or without parents. No situation is the same. No child is the same. The experiences are different from each generation, from each child to child to child. This was trying to reach at a general, broad view of an older generation that grew up from the 40s and 50s era, translating that into the time they've got now as it is. There were teenagers back in the 40s and 50s, and album was created and listened to back in the 71 era. So there was a lot of differences on that situation. A lot of adult activity versus what the kids are getting themselves into these days. And compared to their time and our time. So you still had to stretch your mind out when you listen to this damn thing. But for me, I listened to it as a kid. I'm sitting behind a big, huge chair, and I'm listening to this thing, and I don't understand what the fuck it is. But the tune is still sticking in my head. And all throughout these years, I never understood what the hell the damn thing was. There was no way I've been able to figure this shit out. It's simple enough. As I said before, shortly after David passed away, and I was doing some searching online, including Google searches, and I happened to type that thing in there. And I saw the album, I'm like, okay. Then I listened to it, I'm like, oh my God, I know this one. And that's when a flood of memories came through my head I lived through that time. I lived through that era. I experienced that as a child. And as a young child, I didn't know anything. A 5-year-old is still growing up, learning, trying to understand. But I didn't have perspective. I didn't have context. Hell, I was immature as hell. And this album really took me back on this one. Dave and I never spoke about this, not that I recall. And I don't think Ma ever heard of it. If she did, we would probably have discussions about this thing. But I don't recall, failing memory goes, we ever talked about it individually or as a family about this one. Because there was no chance, no opportunity. We didn't even know that we didn't even have access to the 45, let alone a tape, if there was a tape about this damn thing. But this came out in the stores. It wasn't a hit, and it wasn't an album that my brother would get. If he hadn't shared it with me. But this was I tried to think about it. I tried to think about what the thing meant, but the thing, for me, it's an anchor point of a point in time that I lived in that I was trying to understand. You know, I went through kindergarten and go through preschool during that time. Was it 6 or 7 that you go into kindergarten or in first grade? 76 is when I was in 4th grade. 75, 74. So let's see. Oh, oh, shit. My brain's fizzled out again. Right on this one. Okay. 16. Okay. Yeah, I have to. My brain is having issues this morning. Wait a second. Oh, no, no, I skipped one. Okay. Shit. That was all. Fuck a duck. That's okay. Hold on. One, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So which grade was I in during that time? Uh, 3, 2, 1. Kindergarten. Pre. All right. Okay. So the album came out about 70, 71. I was about the age of 4 when I had my open heart surgery and I'm recovering during that time. So in the apartment, I can only move out so much. I'll move around a little bit. I still had to be watched like crazy. But somehow during that time, that album was listened to because my brother was watching me during that time when he came back home. And I guess I had neighbors watching me during that time in the apartments. I remember the 1970 earthquake we had. That was a jolly. No, it was 71 we had the quake. Yeah. 70 was the open heart surgery. 71 was the uh, Silmar quake. But it was during that time that they listened to it. And I was going through preschool during that time. I was going through preschool. And I guess maybe I didn't do kindergarten over at Coldwater. Because I would have done it at the preschool. Yeah. I barely remember what the hell the name of the place was. It was buried somewhere along Victory Boulevard. Or actually Van Owen Boulevard. I was close to a company called Sweetheart Cup. Ma would drop me off before she went to work. Anyway, you listen to the thing and you get the feelings. Because if you're my age and older, you would understand that that would have brought a little bit of comprehension. Now the thing is, this was trying to reach a younger generation and an older generation. An older generation, the kids didn't argue. You did what you did what you told, and the kids were doing whatever they wanted to do. I want to have friends over. I want to go over. I want to stay over for several hours. I can't do that. I can't play my guitar. Look at my new guitar. I got my new guitar. I don't get it. I'm trying to find something I like over here, and you're a downer, man. You don't argue with me. You're living under my roof over here. Clean your hair up. Get out here. Oh, God. George Thorogood on this one. I have to throw this one out. George Thorogood. Get a haircut and get a job. I think that was a song right there. Hold on. It was Thorogood. Oh man, you talking about a rebel song. This was talking to the generations, both generations, and basically it was trying to tell you what the hell was going on. That this is a 80s, 90s kind of guy. He wasn't in his 20s. Hell, he was in his 30s, late 20s, early 30s. He was growing up under that kind of household. So I suppose he probably listened to the song, Things Get a Little Easier. Hell, I related to Thorogood than I did to the damn song in the first place growing up. I always had to have a haircut. Always have it had styled. Always had to be, Johnny's a good little boy. Always a good little boy. Not really at the time. Not really. And wasn't feeling it either. I really wasn't. But that's how things went. Get to be a teenager, you had to work your ass off, get a haircut, get a job. That was the song that Thorogood did was no joke. A lot of kids sang it, and it was no joke to them. But the parents, it was real. You get a haircut, you get a job, and you behave in a certain pattern because this is how the older generation grew up under. You followed them. It's no wonder that each generation had a problem concerning about identifying with each other because we always had a problem concerning about, hey man, don't you understand where I'm coming from? And the older generation is like, yeah, I've been there myself, but you know what? I had to grow up and I had to do this shit. Well, we don't have to, man. Well, wait until you get in our age and then you will understand what the fuck's going on. No, we don't, man. We're young. We're playful. We're going to have fun. Like every other damn stupid generation. And we downgraded always the next generation coming up. It's like a vicious escalator that we're on here. You're starting at the bottom floor. You're learning about life like crazy, and you're being yelled at and argued about until after somehow you surpass one way or another your older generation, and then you see the younger generation coming up right behind you, and they're doing the same damn shit. And you're telling them the same damn shit that you heard from the generations beforehand. And the younger generation's like, no, we don't, man. The reason for the rebellion songs we got, and for the album that came out, things get a little easier once you understand. Yeah, well, when you understand it too damn late, that's when the album really hits you, and that's really where it kicks you. Because the teenagers had to listen to this damn shit and understand where the parents are coming from. The teenagers are looking at the parents like, you're an older generation, you play bridge, you go through this one, and you're telling me not to do this shit? Why? Because I'm telling you. The thing is, the older generation didn't have had an issue of explaining themselves because they couldn't do that to their older generations that they were raised under. How do you explain the shit that you went under in the correct terminology and in the correct way to make sure that the younger generation understand what the hell is going on? It's a system by rote. By rote. And what I mean by that is we learn by repetition. We repeat like parrots of information that we have, but we're filtering in new information, and we're supposed to be thinking, but it's still information by rote. And it's telling me these days that either I pay attention to this damn shit or I don't. And I've been paying attention to it, and I'm still like, no, I am not following this shit. I'm not following this shit at all. I'm not dealing with this. So, I'm not going to. I'm going to do things my way until I realize that I've been doing the things my parents have been doing, or Ma had been doing, and her parents before it. I argued, I backtalked. My mother had different experiences as a teenager. She didn't get the rebel. She had maturity forced upon her, where she had to grow up in a hurry and lose all of her innocence. All that wonderful growing up teenage angst shit that everybody else was trying to show, including to show Happy Days, how things are supposed to be. Shit. Trying to compare people to the Cunninghams, or let alone Andy Griffith shows. The shit that they kept putting out in the 60s and 70s that were supposed to bin. That shit back mid 70s they started growing. They started having the rebellion age on television. Well, what I was trying to get back into the soundtrack here is they say things get a little easier once you understand. It's a generational gap that you need to understand at this point, and we're not done with the conversation. I'm done with the time because I got to save as much room as I can on my damn drive. But I'll get back to this because we're talking about generational gap between the old generations and the new generations. So, and that's what I have to do.